All righty, you all. So I've got 2 minutes past the hour. I'm going to go ahead and get us started and kicked off for today. Thank you all for being here. In the world of Zoom, where you could be absolutely anywhere, I appreciate you all choosing to be here with me this morning to have what I feel is an important conversation, kicking off Talk It Out Tuesday and thinking about collegiate leaders specifically. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicole Augustine. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. I am the founder and CEO of Rise Consultants. That's my consulting firm, but I'm also here for two other reasons. I have a wonderful partnership with Talk It Out NC focusing on underage drinking. And then I want to talk to you all about a new initiative focused on colleges and specifically historically Black colleges and minority serving institutions. The other thing that I want to say to you all is this series is called Talk It Out Tuesdays. So I want to prepare everyone that you will actually have an opportunity to talk, and my hope is that folks will talk. I am going to only myself present for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and then I want to open the floor for a discussion and conversation because this is about how do we as leaders ourselves in prevention remember the college space. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to remember that there are so many students in college who are under 21, and that's a space that we should continue to remember. So as I, present a few things, I want folks to really be thinking about what would you like to talk about, what kind of questions and discussions we might have. The main thing that I want folks to remember is we are in WebEx. A lot of us, I know for me, I've been using Zoom a whole lot lately, so WebEx is a little bit different to navigate. There's a couple features I want to draw folks' attention to, and one is the hand raise. Like I said, I want to have a conversation with you all who are here. And the best way to do that is when we get to that point is raise your hand. That way it'll trigger for Heather Murray, who's the host here. You'll see here from the Talk It Out folks. She will be able to signal to unmute you. That way you can have a conversation and we can talk out loud. So just remember, you'll need to use the hand raise feature for that to happen. Otherwise, right now you won't be able to unmute yourself and she'll be able to select that. So I'm really hoping you all will be excited to have conversation today. So what's my goal? I have three main things I want to accomplish in our time together. One is to introduce everyone to the HBCU Collaborative Network. I'm really excited to talk about this group and who the group is, what we're doing. The second objective is really focused on a collegiate leadership project that we've been so excited to have in partnership with the North Carolina State Department of Health and Human Services. And then I want to spend some time really talking about how you can get involved. I figure everybody chose to be at this webinar for a reason. And I want to talk about what is it that we can do to prioritize the collegiate space and our college leaders. And that's really where we'll spend the bulk of our time. So to get started, the HBCU Collaborative Network, this has been such an exciting adventure. The history of the network is this. It actually began, it was birthed out of a project that the addiction professionals of North Carolina had here in North Carolina. So some of you may be familiar with funding streams called Partnership for Success. It's a federal funding project. Well, our state applied and got funding for 10 communities across our state to be working on substance prevention issues. Well, out of that project came an initiative focused on health disparities. Many of you remember we're still in it, starting in 2020 up to today. There's been a really big focus lately on health disparities and health equity. And some of it came because the COVID-19 pandemic really shed some light on the fact that there are disparity and equity issues that have been happening for centuries. But it was something specific about this pandemic that really shed some light on that. And so as a result, we really saw a lot of groups and a lot of initiatives focused on disparities. Well, the addiction professionals in North Carolina, the folks at the time began to develop what they called an HBCU collaborative network. And that network is just maybe a couple years old at this point. And truly, the network was developed as an opportunity to scale strategies that are focused on reducing health disparities and really looking at how schools, how leadership within the HBCU Collaborative Network could be help and benefit in looking at the health disparities that are happening. And so the group got its beginning there. And what has happened over the last year, I would say, is one, I came in contact with the group, and two, we decided to really professionalize ourselves and make ourselves a legitimate group. And that's a part of this collaboration that you're getting to witness here today. Just to give you all a little bit of background on the team that helps support the HBCU Collaborative Network, my company, Rise Consultants, provides management services, if you will, for the network. And our network is growing. I want to show you all some of the partners and the schools that are already in the network. We've got 3 schools that are participating: North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State, Winston-Salem State, Bennett College, and Fayetteville State University. These are our 4 primary schools that are currently involved and active. And then we have a number of community partners that help support the network. The first being APNC, which is the reason we exist. So we're so excited that we have them. And then most recently, this partnership with Talk It Out NC, which is what brings us here today. This logo here, some of you may not be familiar. There's a group called the Trauma Resources Institute, and they focus on the community resilience model. And so we've been partnering with them to look at how we can embed resilience into college campuses. And so we're just excited about all the different folks who are taking interest in our work. Our network is growing. Very much so. Basically, what we do, we leverage the expertise of the collaborative. The network is all about bringing together professionals from colleges, folks who care about the college space, to really think about how do we network together to improve outcomes for campuses, but I would also say the communities surrounding those campuses. And we do this work because we realize that there is an issue, you all, with health disparities and health equity in our country, and that there's a strong network of historically Black colleges and minority serving institutions that really could be centered at creating community change, but also centered at creating future leaders for the advancement of Black, Indigenous people of color. So we're super excited that this type of initiative is happening, and we're really looking forward to expanding our network to all types of agencies and groups who are wanting to kind of think about this very forward way of doing work. We accomplish our goals primarily through resource sharing. We are a network. The really cool thing that's been happening is because we're new, we're still kind of discovering who we are, what we do, but our main thing is about focusing on innovative strategies and strategic partnerships, which is what leads me to a description of our most current project and the project that brought us into collaboration with Talk It Out NC, focusing on underage drinking in college campuses. So what's been interesting to think about, you all, is the COVID-19 pandemic also shed light on the fact that there's greater stress in society now. Many of you may remember a lot of the reports that came out initially of people consuming more alcohol. For the folks who are now working from home where you didn't work from home, that drink after work, the 5 o'clock hour became noon. Mimosas. I remember seeing so much social media about how the shift in pushing to work from home changed the drinking culture. And it became evident to think about, how is this change being seen on our college campuses? Just imagine, for those of you who went to college yourself, what it was like to go to college, what it was like to be on the dorm, what it was like to live off campus. The whole culture of the college space was shifted dramatically by COVID-19. And so what ended up happening last year, our state got new additional funding to prioritize projects that were looking at resilience as at post COVID-19. And so our group, even though we were new, we were bold enough to submit an application. And we're here today as a result of that. And so we submitted an application called Collegiate Resilience Healing Post COVID-19, where we focus specifically on developing an internship program. Actually, it's a federal work study program, which I was most excited about. Something that is always important to me is that when we do the work of prevention, that we compensate people for the work. Because if we really think about you all, what we do in prevention, it's about saving lives. And I think saving lives is something that requires compensation. So it was really important to me that all the students we use aren't doing this work for free and that they were paid. So we submitted a proposal for an innovative project, all structured around the federal work study component. Something that I learned that I don't know if you all knew this, but federal work study is a great program. The federal government pays for 75% of the student's salary. So we set a pretty standard campus salary of $10 an hour. And I know that may sound like, clutch my pearls, but in college, the prices are a little bit different. So at $10 an hour, you all, we're only paying $250 per student. So it makes the innovation and the project so affordable. And what we did is we applied to get the original project was 5 students at 4 schools. We actually ended up getting 17 students at 3 schools. That's our new numbers right now. But the beautiful thing about it is every student is a federal work study student. They're getting paid for their hours and their time. And we split the program into 3 main components, and I'll share those with you. The first is what I call the academic study component, and that's where the group of students have an internship with myself. And in that, they're going to learn about prevention, they're going to learn about community resilience, and primarily they're going to learn about how do you build communication campaigns so that they can have knowledge of what prevention is and the strategy of using promotions and messaging to raise awareness and create a cultural change. And so we're super excited because of the connection that I have with Talk It Out NC. They're able to leverage the resources of Talk It Out to prioritize the specific conversation of underage drinking that has always been a problem on college campuses, you all, but potentially could be more of a problem given the unique stress that the COVID-19 pandemic has created. And so that's the first component. The second thing that the students will do with their time is they will have what I'm calling the work study part. The work part. And this is where each student is partnered with their campus counseling center. And so they split their time to do on-campus internship hours right there with the behavioral health services. This gives students a new look into what are behavioral health services. Our goal and hope with this is that we get a new body of students interested in this work, you all, because I don't know how many of you have been doing prevention for a while, but if you have, you know our field is aging out. And this is something we really have got to be thinking about is what are we doing to create pathways into prevention so that we have future leaders who care about this work and will carry this mantle. I'm still young, but I don't plan on doing this work forever. Okay. And so as a result, it's really important to me that we're building up the next generation of prevention leaders. And that's why we developed this project in this particular way. The third and final component of the project is what we call the culminating experience. And the idea is that the students will take what they're learning from prevention, what they're learning from underage drinking, and partner in order to create some sort of campus initiative. And the goal, we've got all the students working together. So the goal is that this project would be mirrored on all of the campuses, you all. And I'm really excited about this. We just met the group of students last week. And they're super excited. They're ready to like do this work. And I'll tell you all, when I asked the students, like, what made you decide to apply for this internship? Because they all had to apply. It was an application process. Most of them have direct experience with substance use disorder, whether they have a family member, a friend who is in recovery, someone who's still actively using. These were folks who have a personal story as to why this topic is so important to them. And it was just such an amazing experience to hear these students say, I'm doing this because I want to create a change. I want something different to happen for the generations of folks that I've seen struggling with the substance use disorder. And so it's been really encouraging. I'm excited to see the development of the project and to see what they come up with. The grant actually ends in a year, March of 23. So we've got a year to work with these students, build their leadership skills, and see what type of initiatives can they develop and create on their campuses. So the thing I wanted to kind of talk with you all about is why have we decided to focus on campuses? And specifically colleges, because when you think about conversations around underage drinking, we socially have a tendency to focus on middle school and high school, which is absolutely wonderful and absolutely perfect. I want to just share two primary reasons why I think we should not forget our college students, because I think we have a lot of initiatives, a lot of work that really meets that space of, middle and high school. And if you even think about it, we have some funding that restricts us to 18 and below instead of 21 and below, right? Which would shift you into that college space more. Here's my thought, you all, on this. We all know it takes the brain quite a bit of time to fully develop into our 20s, okay? And so truly, we should be concerned about underage drinking all the way up to 21. And if you think about the composition of our colleges, a majority of the students are still under 21. So I think it's important that even though we have a tendency to have this culture, that colleges are this space where there's this rite of passage that we allow for folks to kind of have a pass. Unfortunately, having that mentality, you all, I believe, has some students unnecessarily experiencing trauma, placing themselves at a risk of a substance use disorder themselves. And then we've got some students who are already in recovery in college, you all, because they're coming from the high school space with a substance use disorder. So it's really important for us to be thinking about how colleges still should be a focus on underage drinking. And then the second thing that I think it's important for us to remember, you all, is like I said before, this work to me is about creating the leaders of the future. Whether we are preventing them from using substances early so that we keep their minds and brains healthy, or we're setting up opportunities for them to know more about this work so they themselves can enter into the field of prevention and public health and behavioral health. And so that's the reason why we have decided to focus this initiative and this work on colleges. And we hope that you all will join us too. So at this point, I'm getting into the last objective here. I feel like I've already talked too much. And I'm ready to have conversation with you all because I want us to think about, how can you get involved? What made you decide to come to this webinar today? What is it about collegiate leadership? What is it about the college space? What are you hoping to contribute when it comes to this group of folks? And so what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to stop sharing. That way I can um, see the window here, although the window doesn't help you all because none of you all are on camera. But what I'd love to do is to open the floor for some conversation, you all. So if there's anyone who wanted to share a comment or a thought, again, just use the hand raise feature. That way Heather can unmute you. And then I'd love to kind of talk about what you've heard so far, but also thinking about what are your strategies? What are you thinking about in terms of prioritizing college students and what you might be thinking about today? So I'm going to give a little pause here because I know it usually takes folks a few minutes to, one, get the courage to speak. But we are a family here, you all, and this is about talking it out and having great conversation. So I will pause a minute and see if there's anyone who's wanting to raise their hand and have a conversation. Wonderful. Okay, so we've got Joe. How you doing, Joe?
I've got the courage to speak. I don't have the sense to say anything that makes any sense. However,
That's
I
okay.
love the idea of going into colleges and spreading that message. And I look back at my history. Now I'm a little bit older, and I probably will do this work the rest of my life because I am in long-term recovery. And being recovery prevention is just part of your everyday
Yes.
life.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
to share that with other people is really important for me to grow in connection and spiritually with other people. So that
Mm,
message I'll continue to carry. And looking at my experience, raised in a fairly strict family with a lot of drinking going on, but you don't do as I do, you do as I say.
Right.
As soon as that door opened up and I left home and went to Madison, University of Wisconsin, bam, the wheels were off.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no such thing as college recovery. There was no such thing as, you know, people getting together talking about not drinking. At
Mm-hmm.
least my experience was nothing but talking about drinking, and really sort of kicked me off into um, a drinking pattern that really probably got me to the addictive standpoint. So I think it's critically important. What I'd like to hear some information on, though, is really some strategies on how to get onto campuses. I know that I could go. I'm not far from Asheville. I could go to UNC Asheville, and who should I talk to? What are some strategies that I can use to make that leap? What sort of information can I bring to them?
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking my hand down now.
Okay. Thank you, Joe, for sharing everything you shared. I appreciate you being the first person to step up and say something. And I feel like you had a lot to say and something worthy to add. So thank you for that. I will start with responding to your question first, which is how do we get connected with colleges in the first place, right? Because here's what's interesting is colleges really are their own university. They're their own kind of universe and community, if you will. And so for me, what I have found the best and easiest way to get in is to get connected with any sort of services on the campus that are focused on behavioral health, counseling, those spaces. So sometimes you've got to find the way in, and a lot of times the way in is through that person. I would say, in addition to that, some of the work actually begins with really just starting the relationship of understanding and interviewing folks around what is the campus culture. Because here's what I have found is the challenge is what you described about your college experience is pretty common. And there is almost this culture, sometimes administratively, to not really think about prevention when it comes to college spaces. There is this culture sometimes to say, oh, they're young, this is what they do. We have different rules on campus. And sometimes, depending on how the administration is thinking, that can actually put up a roadblock to them even being open to more explicitly addressing the issue of underage drinking and prevention. And so, what I find is I like to talk to who's on campus has been designated to address substance use issues. I like to start with that person first and find out, what is the culture here? What kind of support do they have here? And sometimes, honestly, you can even see the level of college support by the level of funding that person gets. Are they one counselor for a large campus? What is the campus policy around substance use? Our campus is taking a harm reduction approach. Our campus is taking a prevention focus. Are they focused even on recovery? Because, like you said, Joe, for the students who do end up transitioning into having a substance use disorder, is there any sort of recovery friendly space on the campus? Sometimes college campuses are completely hostile to anyone who is attempting to be in recovery, And those are the kind of environments that we need to address. So, what I have found helpful is starting first with how do I get connected with the folks who have been designated to address this issue on campus? And then for me, look, Joe, we are prevention consultants. So, part of what we do is we sit alongside the community, a person, a partner, and assist them in improving their operations, improving what they're doing. And to me, it's through those relationships that you begin to say, okay, here's what else we can do. The last thing that I'll say with this, Joe, is something that is, I think, sometimes a place of contention when we talk in college spaces, is for colleges that do decide to address substance use issues. I see polarity. I see either colleges that are like abstinence only, they're under 21, we're not even talking about this, we're really harsh on our penalties, to colleges that take a more harm reduction approach of recognizing that because of the space and environment and culture that substance use may occur, so how do we reduce the harms associated with that? And honestly, when you sit in the space of prevention, there are some folks who are not even comfortable with harm reduction stuff. And so I think even philosophically as a field, the college space creates some unique conversations that not all of us are ready for. And I think that's why prevention has a tendency to stay away from college, because sometimes you have to shift into conversations around harm reduction, and not everybody is comfortable with that, you know? So it creates this strain, if you will. But I really appreciate you sharing everything that you shared, Joe. And I didn't know if you had a comment or anything, or did I answer and give you enough to think about? Oh, Joe, you should be able to talk.
Okay. No, you did answer, and and I've been talking the harm reduction model. That's really
Okay,
that's where I come from.
me
It was
too.
not that long ago that I was at a prevention conference in Raleigh. I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, and I heard I can't remember the doctor's name from up here in Mayhack, but anyhow, he was giving a presentation. He talked about you know, MAT. And he
Hmm.
just said, somebody who's on and using methadone, and they've got their uh, job back, they got their family back, they've got a smile on their face. They wake up in the morning, greet the day with "Thank you, I'm alive." Are they in recovery? I just had to look at myself and go, yes, they are. And so abstinence is not the only way. And the
Yeah.
harm reduction report is really the way to go. And so I love that,
Mm.
particularly on campus. I think that way. And the other thing too is I get involved in a bunch of this with just giving and working with other people in coalitions that I'm involved in.
Mhm, mhm.
Because sometimes I'm a little bit too, and people will listen. I'm involved with a couple of youth coalitions. They will listen to youth better than to a
That's
71-year
true.
old man talking to them about getting
Yeah,
drunk when he was in his teens. So
yeah. Oh, yeah.
so those relationships, just a reminder, thank you for sharing that, Nicole, that's
Yeah.
so critical to our work.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, I'll even say that, sometimes the challenge with recovery, just to kind of highlight this, you mentioned the age gap, right? And that youth will more likely listen to youth close to their age. Because sometimes what I see is that when folks are recovering, they want to do work with youth, which is great. But the challenge sometimes with youth is they look at the person and say, oh, well, you came out okay, you're in recovery. The mind of the teenager does the opposite. It's like, oh, well, I'm good. You know what I mean? Because look what you went
Oh,
through. And
yeah.
oh my God, look at where you are today, right?
Yeah.
And so we
Right.
talk about sometimes that when folks are in recovery, their desire to reach back and help the young folks totally can, but to be extremely careful with like war stories and those sorts of things, because the young brain will interpret that different than the adult brain, you know? And so I appreciate you kind of
Oh,
even mentioning that youth will hear better even from someone their age. Thank you for that. Berna, I see your hand up. Thank you, Berna.
Hello, thank you, Nicole, for being here. I have a question in that you have high school students who it's hard to reach them with the message already,
Mhm.
and they're transitioning into college. How do you provide that message to them now that they are young adults and they have the freedom to to be in this new environment?
Mm. Yes, yes, yes. So I've seen a couple different ways that colleges have done a great job of really specifically addressing their freshman class, which I think you point out, Bernadette, that's a unique category of group within colleges. They're coming, out of high school, and depending on their high school, you all, they either got no information at all about underage drinking, or what they did get wasn't comprehensive, right? And so, and if you think about, right, talk it out is all about parenting conversations too. So some of the challenge too is that young folks have never even talked with their parents. Their parents haven't had conversations about what alcohol is, how it affects the body, what to do if you're offered it and you don't really want to try it, you know? And so that's just as a side note, that's what I love about the campaign, specifically focusing on empowering parents to have these conversations. Well, when you think about the college space, colleges are accepting into their care so many students who have never talked to their parents, who have never got any education. And so there's a couple things I've seen that some colleges have done that I think are really great. And one of the ones is most colleges have some sort of pre-freshman seminar, as they call it sometimes. Whereas there's this work that freshmen will do in that summer before they come in. And there are a lot of colleges now that are focusing on education and raising awareness. And I've seen some colleges actually set it up where students have to finish this course before they can even come onto campus during the summer before. And there are a lot of prevention education online courses out there that are specific for college students that actually talk about what is alcohol, how does it affect the body, resilience skills, what's unique to think about in the college space. And so I've seen some universities will use this in the summer, and then when students come during that orientation week, they'll actually host large group discussions, campus discussions to help the young folks who've just left high school really think and process, wow, this environment I'm moving into, I'm probably nervous, I might be a little scared, I might even be a little bit homesick. And there are all these pressures and access that you didn't necessarily have in high school. And to host conversation and discussions with the freshman class around how to navigate this while also connecting them to resources on campus if they're needing help. And so that's some of the version of what I see that I think is really successful, in addition to where I've seen campuses that have health promotion departments, where they do these large campus-wide communication campaigns that are focused on, reminding folks that if you're under 21, you shouldn't be drinking. If you do get into a situation where you need medical help, where do you call? Who do you call? How do you get access to help and assistance? And so those are some of the strategies that I have seen be extremely helpful. The other thing I'll say, Berna, in thinking about this is I do think we're at a place where it's imperative for us to be innovative. And to me, that means us actually creating focus groups and having conversations with this age group to really talk to them about how do we reach your peers? How do we reach folks your age? Because the other thing that has changed since I know at least I went to college is how people communicate has changed, how people interact has changed. When I went to school, Facebook didn't even exist. It barely existed. We were using MySpace, and you had to count the characters on a text message. You guys remember that back in the day? Like all of that has changed. And now we've got folks who our youth are engaging with each other on all these different social media platforms and in the virtual world. So for me, it becomes the question of how do we reach folks, Berna, I think is even more important now because sure, we have some traditional ways that we reach our young people, but I think we've got to start pressing into the space of innovation. How do we get comfortable with TikTok and Snapchat and I don't even know all the names of the spaces, but how do we get comfortable and leverage these new spaces to promote a message? Here's what I think, you all, is every other industry does an amazing job of reaching their audience. Most of you have some sort of social media on your phone. Think about the ads you receive. Think about the commercials that come through. Think about what shows up on your news feed. Not all of it is personal from your friends. Some of it is, hey, you happen to be looking at a shoe the other day. I found it for you. You can buy it here. Here's a cool gadget you might like. For me, I'm like, what if we start imagining messages of prevention, messages of wellness and resilience being embedded inside social media platforms? That way, our young folks are not just inundated with ads around how cool it looks to drink, right? Because we know the alcohol industry does a great job of that, okay? But that we also have in that space messages around health, wellness, resilience, recovery, health promotion, right? And I think, it's time for us to step into that place of innovation even though it's a little bit scary, because most of us, that's not our personal wheelhouse. So thank you for that question, Berna. Did you have any thoughts you wanted to share in response?
No, I think that you're kind of on point. It is a difficult step to take. We
Mhm.
are in a new way of looking at things. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Berna. All right, so I want to go back to the floor here. If there's anyone else who had a thought or comment they wanted to share, I'd be curious if anyone in the room is actually currently working with colleges and have any advice you'd like to offer or lessons learned you'd like to share with the room. And I'll pause a minute to give people an opportunity. Okay. 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 Well, I just want to remind us that exactly what is said here, that stopping underage drinking in North Carolina begins with us. It begins right here in this room with all of us, the work that we're doing. For those of you who are working with the middle school and high school age groups, I want to say that working with colleges should be a natural progression because, as Berna mentioned, right, quite a few of our students decide to go into college. So I'd be thinking about who are some of the schools and universities that are connected or near the schools that you work with. What is their culture? Are you talking and partnering with them around the culture of underage drinking on their campus? And if you all have never worked with Talk It Out before, I encourage you to reach out. Heather, I don't know if maybe in the chat you can put for everyone an email address and maybe even the Talk It Out NC website for folks to reach out. Talk It Out is an amazing resource. I have been partnering with them now for a long time. They have a lot of materials. It's all free, high quality. They even have materials in different languages. And so I think it's important that we leverage the resources right here in our state to improve the issues around underage drinking because it is a preventable issue. And so I just want to make sure everyone knows that and folks have access and resources as needed to do your work and focusing on college campuses. So I don't know if there are any other thoughts or conversations in the room. Anything else folks want to lift up today? I have enjoyed talking with you all. Oh, yay, Jeff has a comment. Wonderful. Jeff, if we can get Jeff unmuted.
This. I just want to share, and it's something you've really said already, but I'm really excited to hear from the students directly for a lot of reasons, not just because it's what's most effective, but COVID has just been so unique in terms of any other kind of event. And so I think it would be silly to assume what we don't know, and we need to hear directly from them. And I think that approach is just so much more authentic to have it really be student driven. And I think that testimonial will be important to continuing this work long term. So just want to thank you for the great work you're doing. And at Talk It Out, we are excited, happy to support however we can. The website is talkitoutnc.org, and all of our staff members are happy to connect with everybody. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Jeff. I completely agree with you. Like that's the part I'm most excited about, to have access to at least a group of students who can to give us more information and more insight on what's happening on campuses. Because I know for me, I can't even imagine what it's been like to be a student in the last year and a half. COVID has really changed and shifted some things naturally and created more stress. So awesome, awesome. Well, let me lend the floor just one more time. You all just heard from Jeff, but I don't know if anyone else from Talk It Out wanted to speak to the room or give a salutation for today, for this morning.
Nicole, I just wanted to say I added my email address, my phone number, and our Talk It Out website in the chat. So if anyone needs anything after this, they are more than welcome to email or call me, and I'll be happy to assist or direct them in to you if it's a question for you.
Perfect. Awesome, awesome. Well, it looks like everybody's going to gain 15 minutes of time. And in the world where Zooms are back to back, I hope that you will take this time not to do work, y'all, because you guys, we were supposed to be here 15 more minutes. I hope you will stand up, take a stretch, maybe step outside, get a little sunlight, drink some water, do a little self-care, because I'm sure you have a meeting scheduled at 11 anyways. All right, you all have a fabulous day. Thank you guys for joining me today.